Whatever.
Hi Playmates, it's Aerostar. A question that you probably heard or pondered yourself is the concept of time travel, and the ability to change your past or your future. I mean, what's worth for you to take a risk to change from the past for a better future? Now hold on to that thought as we go through the story of the core raid that revealed quite an interesting backstory for Mahar, Iris, Valarr, Garff, Carrie, and John. If you're really into Exos lore, listen through all of this and I think you might find something very interesting. Before we dive into the stories themselves, we have to remember that Exos is based on the concept of multiple universes or timelines. These core raids happen on these alternative timelines as Xeon and our team travel through these ripples in time. It's also safe to assume that the various fate core themes that we have happen all in the same alternative timelines, like for example, all the Blooming Someday fate cores happen in that same Blooming Someday timeline, and all the Synergy heroes all happen to live in the same timeline. So the stories that we hear in this journey of the fate core raid is not happening specifically in the main timeline that we're playing, but it's a crossover from a main timeline, the versions of the heroes without the fate cores, the journey of the fate timeline, and the Blooming Someday timeline. Now if that sounds confusing, it basically means that we should assume that the physical appearance of the heroes determines which timeline they're from, the original version of the heroes with no fate core being the main timeline, and the fate core looks of the heroes all being from different worlds, or at least that's how I assume them to be. One thing to note though is that it seems like the consciousness of the heroes are somehow connected between the timelines, so there's definitely similarities between the heroes and the decisions in each of the timelines, although they are physically different people. In general, it seems like the main issue in each of these timelines is Shifraken. He wants to be the king of the universe no matter what version of him you cook up. I wouldn't say he's necessarily evil, just very ambitious, because it does seem like he's very good to his own people and his family, although from what Talia is saying, Shifraken becoming this possessed dragon king means suffering for the entire world. And that kind of makes sense because even in the original lore, Akor, the dragon emperor, was a very good emperor until he caught like this mysterious curse that made him go crazy and had people kill him. Anyway, the gist is that there was a twist in time where the main timeline and the timeline of the Journey of the Fate intertwined, and Talia along with Mania and Garff from the main timeline is trying to fix it. It goes in reverse order, meaning that Carrie's story here happened first, then Valarr's, then Mahar's. And it's here that we learn a little bit more about the backstory of Mahar, Valarr, and Carrie in this alternative Journey of the Fate timeline. Now again, the stories of these heroes are for this timeline, so we can't be sure if it's the same for the backstory of the main timeline that we're playing. Even at the end of the core raid where we return to the main timeline, the heroes are talking about the events of the Return of Journey of the Fate timeline like it was a dream, meaning that even though the consciousness may be connected and shared, the events themselves may not have happened as shown in the core raid in the main timeline that we're currently playing. So hope that all makes sense. So basically main timeline is the timeline that we're playing. Journey of the Fate is a separate alternative timeline in the core raid. They're being intertwined, so they're going to try to fix it. And at the very end, the main timeline heroes are sharing the consciousness of what happened in the Journey of the Fate timeline. Okay, so let's dive a little bit into detail about each of the stories. In this Journey of the Fate timeline, Mahar is betrayed by the nobles who seemed to ally with him in order to take down his older brother Shifraken, was planning on killing their father for the throne, making the rational decision that if Mahar was to give up peacefully and be killed by Shifraken, that Shifraken will kill his wife and son and daughter anyway. Mahar makes the decision to run for it. In this timeline, Brunn has already fallen to Shifraken, so he's unable to find allies in Brunn like he does in the main timeline. But his intent on getting revenge on Shifraken and save his daughter from Iris from slavery is very, very strong. Unfortunately, Talia from the main timeline comes and tells him that he can't do that he must let Iris be and have Iris misunderstand him and hate him. And to make sure that that happens, Talia wipes out Mahar's memory and wipes out all the love that he has for his family and for Iris. Talia from the Blooming Someday timeline is there with the Talia from the main timeline and tells Talia from the main timeline that maybe that this wasn't the best to go about this, and Talia from the main timeline tells the Blooming Someday one that she must stay true to her task. Now, the main timeline Talia also mentions that she'll probably not see herself grown up, which is true. Talia from the main timeline does disappear at the end as she changes her fate too much and doesn't get the chance to grow up in the main timeline. Now, Iris is able to use her hate towards her father to get in touch with Xion and continue her mission to get revenge, and somehow end up saving the world, while Mahar, who lost all his love for his daughter, which was the most precious thing to him, is now just filled with revenge and trying to kill Shifrakin. I think this is really aggravating. Again, this isn't to say this is exactly what happened in the main timeline. I mean, in the main timeline, Mahar just might be an asshole with flashbacks of himself caring for his family in the Journey of the Fate timeline. But it's also hard not to feel like Mahar in the main timeline has some sort of feeling for his daughter. I mean, who knows, maybe Mahar from the alternative timeline is the Mahar in the current timeline if we crossed over. Anyway, this whole family feud between the three brothers Shifrakin, Mahar, Alexei, and their family members is really all hard and really heartbreaking to see. Moving on to the second story, Garff and Valarr's friendship in this timeline is also really sweet. I mean, they start off bantering like real bros, and you see the soft side of Valarr, who even takes care to buy a present for Garff so Garff can give it to his newborn baby, which he missed the birth of. And I didn't even know Garff had babies, except maybe just in this timeline. They were truly friends despite Valarr, really hating to admit so. What's revealed in this timeline though is that Carrie tried to pull the two apart in the main timeline so she could have someone back her up in the plan for domination of Saint West and Brunn, and intentionally set it off so it looked like Garff was cheating to beat Valarr. Talia from the Blooming Someday timeline comes to the Journey of the Fate timeline to play the role of Carrie to set up Garff to look like he cheated, as Carrie was already dead in this timeline so she couldn't have done that. Talia eventually uses Garff from the main timeline to achieve this goal, and so in the end result came that Valarr seeks revenge on Garff in this Journey to the Fate timeline as well. Talia then erases Garff from the main timeline's memory before sending him back to the main timeline, but Garff remains soft for Valarr as he experiences memories that remain in him that Valarr was set up and used, first by Carrie in this main timeline and actually eventually by Garff in the alternative timeline. So Valarr is kind of like that unfortunate soul that's kind of been used despite his soft, intentions and his noble intentions in the beginning. Honestly, I don't even know how to address this. Like, it seems like Talia's task in this round was to try to make Garff go easy on Valarr in the main timeline so that things according to the original prophecy will align and have Valarr join up with Carrie and chase after Xion in the game. In the big scheme of trying to save the world, I'm sure that there's a cost, but it's such a sad ending to what could have been such a wonderful relationship and friendship. And finally, Carrie. So we know that Carrie is dead in the Journey of the Fate timeline, and we know why now. She used forbidden magic to go to the past in order to rebuild Brunn in a way that she saw fit, as no one would listen to her. The forbidden magic had an adverse effect on her, causing her to eventually pass away. I mean, she sacrificed her father and the tribal leaders to get this, but she did succeed in bringing Brunn up stronger as a young leader in the old days right as she was born. In the past, she also meets up with young Prince John, who pretty much falls in love with her for the same reasons that he fell in love with her in the main timeline, which is that she was strong, charismatic, smart, and beautiful. I mean, they form a teacher and student relationship, but more so as friends, and as you see, there's some like lovey-dovey cooties going around between them as well. Talia and Garff show up to tell Carrie that she doesn't have much time left and erase their memories after assuring Carrie that Brunn does form a relationship with Saint West, which we do confirm in Valarr's story that we just went over. By going back and reversing the effect of the magic that sent her to the past, Carrie becomes desperate and Brunn falls into chaos, which is what we learned from Mahar's timeline that Brunn had fallen into Shifrakin. So fast forward, and at the very end, as we talked about, due to all this fixing of the timelines, Talia from the main timeline disappears, Mania loses her eyesight, and Garff is sent back to the main timeline. And I'm assuming that Talia from the Blooming Someday is also sent back to her timeline as well. We go back to the main timeline where we see all the heroes having dreams or shared consciousness from the happenings of themselves in the parallel universe. I mean, does this have you more confused than before? I think whatever story goes into the concept of time travel and multiple universes, there's always going to be some gaps and contradictory information, but this core raid did a fantastic job in reinforcing the truth that the heroes on Exos have strong motives that drive them and make them heroes rather than just mindless, NPCs that have this urge to save the world for whatever reason. There are a lot of strong emotions that run deep into the story, like betrayal and love, that drives these heroes into making certain decisions. Anyway, this core raid was definitely a great story for a rather boring gameplay, then I hope that Exos continues to develop their heroes in this way. I mean, what are your thoughts on these stories? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you like random gaming content, especially on mobile gacha games, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. I post every Wednesday and weekends. Thank you all so much for watching, stay safe, and take care.